What's up, everybody? It is Monday, President's Day. Yeah, markets were closed Monday, February 15th. I just sent out the new edition of my MMT Trader Report. If you want to copy that, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com, and sign up for a 30-day free trial. Remember, I am the only one who has an applied approach to MMT. I take the concepts and understandings of MMT, and I use them to invest. Hey, remember this stuff? Yeah, I'm sure you do, because you're probably walking around wearing one of these. I don't know, I was thinking back. It was almost been like a year when the whole COVID pandemic broke out, and I said I was going to do these videos every day with a mask until it ended, but looks like, it ended up to be a lot longer than I thought. But anyway, I just thought I'd put this on for a reminder. So yeah, I want to talk today about, my topic is, should the Fed just tear up the Treasury securities that it owns? All right, but before I get into that, I want to mention one thing. For those of you who have been following me for any length of time, and I know a lot of you are recent subscribers to this channel, way back in 2016 on the Brexit vote, when was that? I think it was like end of May 2016, I said that there would be no negative impact to the British pound long term as a result of Brexit, as a result of the UK getting out of Europe. Now, that prediction, I even went further to say that it would actually be bullish for the pound. All right? Now, I'm not going to get into now the fundamentals of why that's true. Just you can go back and Google that video that I made back then. And we did see a very sharp decline in the pound when the vote passed as a yes vote. And that was anticipated. I said we're probably going to see that, but the lows in the pound will not be sustained. The pound's going to recover. And sure enough, to this day, we see the pound is like the strongest currency so far this year. The actual Brexit went into effect on January 1st of this year. So the call was totally correct, all right? I had been a buyer of the pound all the way down at much, much lower levels. And this is an example. This is the stuff I talk about. It's about when you have knowledge, when you have understanding, and of course, when you have the mental game, you could take advantage of these very momentous market moves that are driven by pure emotion, lack of understanding, ignorance. And that's what it was. This hyper selling of the pound based on Brexit was never based on any fundamental reality whatsoever. And if you have the understanding, and if you have the patience, because some of you might have gotten into the pound near the lows, but I'm sure you did not hold it for this long. This is a problem I know that a lot of you have, that you get a profit and then you're very quick to take it. And even when you think you have really ridden a major trend for a very long time, you take the profit without any real justification for taking it, when conditions remain the same as they were from the point where you got in. So I'm just saying, this is what happens when you have understanding, when you have knowledge, when you have mental game. I mean, you talk about it being easy. I mean, it's literally, if you could just wait and sit around for these moments when there is kind of like mass hysteria like this, and mass, lack of understanding, and these false moves occur. I mean, that is like investors just putting so much money into your account. But you have to have the knowledge, and you have to have the mental game and the patience to stick with it. All right. Now, I said that. Let's talk about my main topic. Should the Fed just rip up the Treasury securities that it currently holds? I mean, it has 4.2 trillion of Treasuries. There's, 27.8 trillion outstanding. And of course, that's not debt that's often talked about as debt, but it's not debt in the classical sense. That is just the total amount of federal government spending minus taxes that have taken away the currency. That's just the total amount of dollars outstanding, and those are dollars held in the form of treasuries, which itself is just another form of a dollar. It's a dollar with a term, meaning a duration, it could be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and a coupon, meaning an interest payment attached to it. But the Fed owns 4.2 trillion of these treasuries. So that's what, like 15% of the total amount the Fed owns. And it's like 20% of the amount that the public owns. The public owns 21 trillion. The government, intra-governmental holdings, that means other parts of the government hold a total of 6 trillion, of which 4.2 trillion is the Fed. Now, the crazy thing about this, right? First of all, when you think about it, the Fed buying all these treasury securities, and if you go back and if you look at the history of the Fed's holdings of treasuries, it never really got above 600 billion. And then it started to rise, like in 2010, it started to go up 700-800 billion. And then it really got going, in the pandemic, when it went up by like 3 something trillion. All right, over 3 trillion. So we're at 4.2 trillion. First thing you got to understand is the Fed buying these securities is the same thing essentially as the government not having sold them in the first place, right? They're not out there anymore. They're on the Fed's books. That's number one. So it's kind of silly because, it's one thing if the public owns them and that's a substitute dollar. So it's, like I said, it's a dollar in a different form. So the non-government, the public is holding the treasuries because they earn some interest. But now it's the Fed, just on the Fed's books, 4.2 trillion. Now here's the real crazy part. As you know, the government pays interest on treasury securities. The government is paying the Fed interest on its 4.2 trillion in holdings, right? Which comes out to roughly around 100 billion annually. And then the Fed turns around and gives the money back to the Treasury because it's required to do so. So you see how silly and ridiculous this whole setup is. The Fed goes out and buys, in other words, removes 4.2 trillion of treasuries, which is the same thing as saying the government never sold them in the first place, right? Just a subtraction. They're taking out 4.2 trillion. Then the U.S. government pays the Fed 100 billion in interest, which the Fed then turns around and gives right back to the government. This whole thing is like a crazy scheme. If the Fed were to rip up those securities, which it doesn't need, you might argue it needs them because it needs the income because now it pays the interest on reserves. That was Bernanke's big idea. That wasn't the case before Bernanke. The Treasury just paid interest on reserves. They could just switch back to that old relationship where the Treasury paid interest on reserves and the Fed was not on the hook. The Fed doesn't need to earn 100 billion just to turn around and give it back to the government. It could rip up those securities, which would drop the so-called debt by 4.2 trillion right away. You can do that, and it should do that, but we continue with this cockamamie situation that doesn't make any sense. And everybody speaks about it in such serious tones. When you really understand what's going on, it is a cockamamie situation. It should not be. So that would be the very first thing, because, we're going to come up against the debt ceiling again later this year. In September or something like that. It always becomes political. There's going to be a problem. right away you could have 4 trillion of additional space just by the Fed ripping up, writing off those securities. No need at all for this cockamamie scheme to keep going on. Anyway, just wanted to bring that to your attention. Yeah, that's the way it works. It's the silliest, most ridiculous thing in the world. Have a great day, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your President's Day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.